Hi, first graders. My name is Miss Crow, and I'm here to teach you a rule that's going to help you read words while you're reading at home. Our new rule today is SH says shh. Let's say it together. SH says shh. Very nice. Now, this rule is special because it's two letters, but they only make one sound. We call that a digraph. So the digraph today that we're going to learn is SH says shh. Very nice. I want you to repeat the rule after Miss Crow. Are you ready? Okay. SH says shh. Okay, your turn to say the rule. Ready, go. Nice job. Now, Miss Crow is going to write the letters and say the rule because it helps my brain remember what I just learned. If you just have your hands, that's okay. I want you to finger write. When we finger write, we take our finger and we put it on the table that we're sitting at, and we still trace the letters as we say the rule. Miss Crow is going to show you with my whiteboard and marker, but you can use just your finger, or if you have paper and pencil, you can use a pencil. All we're going to do is say the rule and write the rule. Are you ready? Okay. SH says shh. Very nice. Now we're going to do it two more times. So I want you to say the rule and spell it on your table with Miss Crow. Are you ready? Okay. SH says shh. One more time. SH says shh. Very nice job. We're going to read some words that have SH in them, and you're also going to see them in your story. Now, sometimes we see SH at the beginning of a word, and sometimes we see it and hear it at the end of a word. We're going to practice both ways. All right. This is our first word. We have SH at the beginning of this word, so our mouths are ready to say shh. Are you ready? All right, let's sound out the word together. Shh, up. One more time. Shh, up. Nice job. Let's blend it together to read the word. Shop. Nice job. The word is shop. Okay. Now let's look at this word. This word has SH at the end of the word. So the last thing I'm going to hear is shh. Are you ready? Okay, let's start at the beginning. Ish. Very nice. Let's do it one more time before we blend it. Ish. Nice job. All right, let's blend our word together. Are you ready? Go. Wish. Very nice. Okay, we're going to look at one more word. Now, this word has a blend at the beginning of the word, but we can read blends because they just make the letter the sound that they normally make. Okay, so let's try it. Are you ready? Sh. There's that SH. Let's try it one more time. Nice job reading that blend. Are you ready? Sh. Nice job. On the count of three, we're going to read this word together. 1, 2, 3. Slush. Very nice. Now we're going to do one more activity before we look at some sight words. I'm going to say a word and I want you to repeat it. The word is rush. Say rush. Nice job. We're going to count how many sounds we hear in the word rush. Are you ready? Miss Crow's going to count with her fingers. All right. Rush. How many sounds did you hear in the word rush? You're right. There's only 3 sounds. Let's do it one more time. Sound it out with Miss Crow. Rush. Rush. Good job. Now I'm going to show you, because you're going to do this later on in your worksheet packet. If I were going to put the word rush into sound boxes, I'm going to show you what that would look like. Now, I've already set it up right here, so we're going to tap it out and make sure that we have enough boxes. Are you ready? Okay. What's the first sound we heard? Our next sound is and our last sound is shh. Good. So we said rush, and we heard 3 sounds. Let's fill the letters in with the sounds that we hear. Good job. You should know it's an R. Very nice. Let's do the next one. What says Very nice. It's a short U. Sh. What do you hear at the end of rush? It's our SH digraph. Now, because it only makes one sound, it's going to go inside of the box together. Very nice. Here's our word, rush. Rush. Very good. Rush might mean a few different things, but the first thing I think of when I think of rush is that I'm really late to something and I need to rush to get there. So if I were thinking of a sentence with that meaning of rush, I might say, I need to rush to the store to get a cake. Can you think of a sentence with the word rush in it? I'm going to give you a few seconds. I want you to think of one, and then I want you to say it out loud. Are you ready? Go. Did you say your sentence out loud? Nice job. Okay, now before we get to our story that has our SH rule in it, we're going to talk about two sight words that you may have already learned in class, but if you haven't, that's okay because we're going to learn it now and you're going to see it in the story in just a minute. Our first sight word is went. Now this can mean like I went to the mall. W-E-N-T, went. I want you to read the letters with Miss Crow and then say the word. Are you ready? Okay. W-E-N-T, went. Nice job. Another sight word you're going to see in the story is R. This is not like the letter R. This is the word R. It is spelled A-R-E-R. Are you ready? I want you to read it with me. A-R-E. Now let's read the word R. Nice job. So our two sight words that we're going to see in our story are went and R. You may see some other sight words that you've already learned too. When you see those, I want you to read them out loud as Miss Crow reads the story to you too, okay? All right. Now, before we get into our story, you already know that it has a lot of words with SH. You might see it at the beginning or you might see it at the end. While Miss Crow is reading, I want you to put a thumbs up in the air if you hear Miss Crow say a word that has the sh in the word, okay? So Miss Crow is going to read the story and you are going to put up a thumbs up if you hear SH says sh, okay? I think you're going to like our story. Okay, our story today is called Frank the Fish Gets His Wish. It is written by Laura Appleton Smith and illustrated by Preston Neal. I already see two words that have the SH in them. They are fish and wish. They both say shh at the end of the word. As we're reading, I want you to put a thumbs up when you hear another word with SH. Okay. Chapter 1, Frank's Big Tank. Once upon a time, there was a fish named Frank. Frank swam in a big glass tank on a shelf in Pat's pet shop. Frank's tank had sand on the bottom. It had a plant and a pink shell. It had a pretend ship with a mast and a red flag. Frank's tank was the biggest and the best tank in the shop. But Frank was sad. And there he is in the picture and he has a frowny face. Now you might be a good reader and ask yourself, I wonder why Frank is so sad. He has the best tank in the shop. Well, we're going to read to find out why Frank is so sad. Frank would sit in his pink shell and wish his wish. I wish that I had a pal to swim with, to splash and swish and jump with. I would swim the rest of my swims in a dish if I just had a pal to be with. Each night at dusk, when Pet fed Frank, she would tap the glass on his tank. Do not be so sad, she would tell him as she went to the back of the shop to put the cats and dogs and rabbits and frogs and crickets and rats to bed. I wonder how he's going to solve his problem. On the shelf by himself, Frank would sink to the bottom of the tank for his rest. Chapter 2, Scruff the Bad Cat. Oh no. But one night was different from the rest. That night, just as Pat went to the back of the shop, Scruff the bad cat slunk in. Scruff crept up on the shelf and got set to fish for Frank. Oh no! Scruff put his front leg into the tank, but just as he did, the shelf tipped and the tank fell. And this word is in all caps. Read it with Miss Crow. Crash! It smashed on the pet shop rug. Bad Scruff ran as fast as a flash back to his bed and hid from Pat. If you look at the word crash, I hope you had your thumbs up because I see the SH at the end of crash. Nice job. Pat ran in when the tank crashed, and there was her best fish, Frank, in the slush and bits of glass. Frank went flip, flop, flap on the wet pet shop rug. Pat was so sad. She lifted Frank up in her hands. What was she to do? Just then, Frank's gills gasped. Pat had to get him into a tank fast. You might be asking, why does he have to get into a tank fast? Because fish need water to breathe through their gills. In a rush, Pat ran to the back of the shop and dropped Frank into a glass dish. Frank drifted to the bottom. He was as sad as he had ever been. He still doesn't have a friend yet. Chapter 3, Trish and the Glass Dish. When Frank was strong, he swam a bit. The dish was glass with black rocks on the bottom, but there was no ship, there was no shell, there was no plant. But then, bump! Frank bumped into, look at the picture. What was this? I bet you can make a prediction. Frank bumped into a fish. She was a red fish with black spots, and her fins swished as she swam next to Frank. The red fish swam fast past the black rocks in the dish. Frank swam fast next to her. The red fish twisted, and Frank twisted. Frank was so glad. He swam to the top of the dish as fast as a flash. He jumped up and landed with a splash. The red fish clapped her fins for Frank. Why is Frank so glad? You're right, because he has a friend to play with now. Frank swam back to the red fish. My name is Frank, glubbed Frank. My name is Trish, glubbed the red fish. Frank put his fin on Trish's back. Trish, I had a wish for a pal to swim with, to splash and swish and jump with. You are my wish, Trish. I am glad I got my wish. Nice job. Now that page had a lot of SH says sh in it. So I hope you were having your thumbs up every time you heard sh. The pals, Frank and Trish, swam the rest of their swims in the glass dish. Pat put the glass dish on the shelf where Frank's big tank had sat in the front of the pet shop. And when kids would visit Pat's pet shop, they would clap for Frank and Trish's tricks and twist and jumps. And Frank was not sad. He was as glad as a fish could be. And there's the end of our story. Let's go back to one page together, and I want you to read it with Miss Crow. We're going to look at some of the words that have the SH in the word that says shh. Are you ready? So let's reread this page. Are you ready? Okay. Frank would sit in his pink shell. Right there, there's a word that has SH in it. That word is shell. Say shell. Thumbs up if you heard sh at the beginning of the word. Nice job. And wish, his wish. Very nice. So that word is wish, and we hear sh at the end of wish. Good job. I wish that I had a pal to swim with, to splash. There you go. Thumbs up. I hear sh at the end of splash. And swish, thumbs up again. And jump with. I would swim the rest of my swims in a dish. There's the word dish. Now, this is a different kind of dish than I talked about the dish in the kitchen. This dish is a dish where fish live. Nice job. If I just had a pal to be with. So we saw SH says shh lots of times on this page. When you're rereading this story later today, I want you to think about all the words that have SH says shh in them. Nice job. Okay, so here's the end of our story. I hope that you like this story. When we're done with our story, there's also going to be some worksheets that we can do to help us practice our new rule that we learned and remember what happened in the story. If you don't have a printer at home, that's okay. Miss Crow is going to show you I would write my answers on a piece of paper, or you could even finger write them on your table. Okay, so our packet looks like this. For day 1, it says spell the words. Spell the words in the sound boxes. So Miss Crow is going to show you this in a few minutes, but we practiced this earlier in our lesson. This word is, let's sound it out together. Ish, fish. Good, the word is fish. Now there's only 3 boxes to write the word in, but there's 4 letters. Does anyone know why they only gave us 3 boxes? Nice job. It's because the SH makes one sound and it goes in one box. So it would be fish, fish. Nice job. Now you're going to do the same thing for the rest of the words. Our next part of our practice page has us reading this paragraph and answering a question. So the paragraph says, read and think. First, read the text out loud with proper phrasing. Then answer the question in a complete sentence. Miss Crow's going to read this to you, and we're going to talk about the question. So it says, once upon a time, there was a fish named Frank. Frank swam in a big glass tank on a shelf in Pat's pet shop. Frank's tank had sand on the bottom. It had a plant and a pink shell. It had a pretend ship with a mast and a red flag. Frank's tank was the biggest and the best tank in the shop, but Frank was sad. The question says, what have you learned about the characters in this setting that is important to the story setup? So first, where does our story take place? That's our setting. So this paragraph tells us that the story takes place at Pat's pet shop. And really, we're talking about a fish named Frank. So he's our character. And he lives in a tank, a big glass tank in the pet shop. So we have to think about why are thinking about the character and the setting important to the story setup. So this is at the beginning of the story. And it's important because it tells us where we are, who's in our story, and it lets us think about what might happen next, or it might help us make a prediction about a problem that our fish may face. We know that it told us Frank was sad, so we would have to read on to see if we can identify the problem. You may have already remembered it when Miss Crow read you the story. So our last activity is going to be to summarize and synthesize. The directions say, think about what Frank wants based on what you read in the text. You can use the questions in the middle column to help you. So when we summarize, we think about everything that happened in the story, and we pick out the most important parts of the story to summarize it, to shrink it down. So when we tell somebody, we make sure we cover all the important parts. Now, Frank is an important part of our story. So let's read this and then look at what it's asking us to do. Frank would sit in his pink shell and wish his wish. I wish that I had a pal to swim with, to splash and swish and jump with. I would swim the rest of my swims in a dish if I just had a pal to be with. Each night at dusk, when Pat fed Frank, she would tap the glass on his tank. Do not be so sad, she would tell him. So one way to summarize is to think about our story in a chart like this. So the first column says somebody wanted. The question says, what did Frank want? Well, we know from the story that Frank wanted a friend to swim with. So right here, I would write Frank wanted a friend. Our next column or our next row says because. Why did Frank want a pal? We have to think about what we read. I think Frank wanted a pal because he wanted someone to swim with, to splash and swish and jump with. It's right there in our text, right above this row. So in our box, I would write because he wanted someone to swim with. Now, when you complete the rest of the boxes, you're going to look at but, what was our problem? And you're going to write it right here where it says but. The next row says so what did Frank do about his problem? You might have to go back in the story to remember how Frank solved his problem. And the last row is then. Then what happened every night? So you would go back in the story and find what they did every night and write it in this box right here. Once you complete this box, you would have summarized the entire story. Nice job. Okay, Ms. Crow's going to show you, if you just had a piece of paper, what you might set your board up or your paper up to look like. So my board might look like this, or my piece of paper if you don't have a printer to print out the worksheets. So I might draw some boxes. Remember, we talked about spelling the words, tapping them out, and putting the sounds that we hear in each box. The next part was read and think. Remember, that's where it had us read that paragraph and think about the characters and the setting and why that's important to a story. So Miss Crow might write her answer just on a piece of paper, right in the open space. The last part of your worksheet for day one was summarize. Remember, we talked about summarizing is when you talk about the most important parts of the story, which include the character, the settings, and usually the problem that the character faces and how they solved their problem. They set it up like somebody wanted because, and then the rest of the columns. So if you don't have the piece of paper, you can just write your answer in the space on your paper right underneath summarize. Okay. So we did so much today, boys and girls. I am so proud of you guys. Give yourself a pat on the back. Nice job. Remember, the rule that we learned today was SH says shh, and it's a digraph. Now, when you're reading this story, you're looking for words that have SH. But when you're reading other stories this week, you might still see some words with SH in them. I want you to sound out those words as best as you can and remember that this says shh together. Very nice job, you guys. We will see you on another day for more learning.